I'm going to explain to you how I went about learning Italian, what were my goals, and how did I achieve them, if at all. What would I change moving forward as I plan to continue learning this skill? And finally, what did I learn about myself and just learning a new skill in general? Okay, so first off with research, I started by asking my family and friends how they go about learning a new language, but for me, most of my family grew up speaking multiple languages, so I didn't find that incredibly helpful. What I found more helpful was firstly going on to the App Store and just looking up different language apps and reading through the reviews. Second, the most helpful for me was actually speaking with IB exchange students who had to learn English and asking them how they did it. A lot of them said that it's not just about learning how to speak, but you actually need to learn how to read, write, and listen. So that's really how I built my practice regimen. Performance goal for reading was to read a 2-page Vogue article in full without stopping more than 10 times to check what a word meant. I reached this goal, but then I realized that I had really only become great at reading Vogue articles. I then went to go read a cooking article in Italian and I could barely get halfway through. Moving forward, I would make sure that I'm reading articles across different types of magazines and industries. Writing. I realized that I got really good at writing specific words, but my grammar is absolutely horrible. And you know what? I realized I'm kind of okay with that. My goal is more so about speaking the language when I'm in Italy and less so about being able to communicate in written language. I found it really difficult to measure success in the listening category. I really based it on how many times I asked someone to repeat themselves or how many times I needed to pause a podcast to double check a word. But moving forward, I think I would focus a little bit more on recording my feedback more clearly and more consistently. Speaking in Italian. This was by far my greatest challenge, which is ironic considering it was my main goal. I found myself very uncomfortable when it was time for me to initiate a conversation versus actually just repeating back a sentence to someone. I think this was mainly because I'm a little self-conscious about my accent, especially when comparing it to that of my family members. Lesson learned, just leave your ego at the door, build up a little bit of confidence, and recognize that if you want to learn a new skill, you need to realize that you're going to suck at first. To help figure out what I wanted to change, I decided to adopt one of your exhibits, but change the titles up a little bit so it's related to learning a new skill. 3 main things that I would change. First, my calls with Angelo were really awkward because although we set up a time, we did not set up how the call would be organized and who would lead what. Second, the podcasts. They're a great idea in theory, but if you want to use them for learning a new skill, you actually need to take notes while you're listening to the podcast. And last, I found it really difficult to record my feedback after already spending 20 minutes or more on the tasks itself. So I would actually make that a task in itself, one day just recording feedback. My biggest takeaway is that it's not just about learning the skill itself, it's also about unlearning some of the biases that you may have come into that practice regimen with in the first place. So for me, looking back, I came into this already doubting my accent and already comparing myself to my family members. Moving forward, I want to make sure that this is fun and enjoyable, like what Andre said when he came in. Don't compare yourself to others, leave your ego at the door, and make it a game for yourself. Enjoy it and take it as a challenge.